Hey everybody, my name is Johnny and I like to talk about games. Today we're talking about Final Fantasy XVI after seeing the footage they showed in the recent State of Play event. I got some thoughts and I've been thinking for a few days, what is it that excites me about a new Final Fantasy, right? What do I like about those games? We were talking about it in the other video that I have enjoyed a lot of those, but why? What is it, right? I try to break it down to some kind of fundamentals. And I thought of two things that I really like about the setting and the vibe in those games. One is the gang, right? So the group of people with you, the banter between everybody, the dynamics between the relationships and all that. Number two is actually the traveling. If you look at those games, at least the ones that I've played, there's always an element of pilgrimage. In fact, Final Fantasy X, it was all about a pilgrimage, quite literally, but many of those games have some kind of travel element, and the journey the characters are going through is almost symbolized as well in that physical travel that they undertake. And I think for me, the gang with the travel brings it all together and really is a big part of those experiences for me. So let's talk about Final Fantasy XVI, where one of the key things that people talked about from the trailer or the footage is that you didn't have a normal party system in the combat. Now, this doesn't bother me as much as most people, it seems, because for me, the party or the gang, as I called it, can come in many forms. It doesn't actually have to be a part of the combat for me. It's more about the relationships you form along the way in your travel. And this could be a static party, but it could also be different characters you encounter that maybe reappear and form some kind of bond with you. The reason I mention that is because in past titles I've enjoyed side characters sometimes a lot more than even main characters that are static in your party. So I can think about Cid from Final Fantasy VII, right? Cindy from Final Fantasy 15, for her personality, of course. Lots of these characters. I love their appearances and reappearances in the story. And they were actually, more enjoyable to me in some ways than some of the main characters in your party. So it doesn't discourage me much to see that maybe we don't have that normal traditional party system in combat. Now, what we do have, though, is a kick-ass summon system. It looks like you can summon several Eidolons or Aeons, whatever you want to call them, to fight for you. The question is, how much can you control them, right? Because looking at that footage, the thing that stuck out to me is that it didn't seem like you could control them directly, at least not in the same way as when you saw your character fighting. It seemed like a much more action-based, almost Devil May Cry style battle, whereas it switched a little bit more to a cutscene type or on rails for the Aeons. So I don't know how much control we're gonna have over them, and that's gonna be the interesting part. If we have, long animations for the Aeons where you summon them, they do their thing, and then they go away, I don't know if that's gonna get old, right? If you're just calling them over and over in battles like that. But if it's truly dynamic, where you call them and you can control them, similarly to Final Fantasy VII, where you can at least issue commands. I'm thinking of the remake here, where you call them into the battle and you can issue commands over time, so that they're doing their own thing, but you can also command them to some extent. I would like that. I would definitely like to see some element of control over the Aeons. But let's talk about the DMC Style Combat. Everybody's kind of freaking out like, oh, is this a Devil May Cry clone? We don't need that. That's not Final Fantasy. It doesn't worry me too much, guys. For one, I loved Devil May Cry 5. So if we have something along those lines, bring it on, right? I'm gonna be happy to have that gameplay. But I don't think it's fair to say it's just a copy of that or anything. I think this is a true movement, or even evolution, you could say, in the direction of real-time action-based systems for these games. We saw this start a little bit in earlier titles like Final Fantasy 13, where they had a few elements, but the game was pretty poor. 15, had a truly just action-based system where everybody's kind of popping off and doing things in real time. And then, of course, Final Fantasy VII Remake builds a little bit on that with its own system that's also real time. And I think it's a natural evolution for the title to go into a Devil May Cry direction where, you have combos, actual combos you can make. Hello, everybody. I love how much of the damage numbers you saw and just how many hits you were getting in. It just seems so fast as well. I really like the pacing and the look of the combat. Another thing I want to talk about is the HUD. So you had the HP bar on the top left, and then on the top right, I think you had the enemy HP bar. At least that's what I remember from seeing it, and it looked clean, guys. I actually liked the HUD a lot for that. The colors, do I remember correctly that it was kind of a green type of color to it? It had this sheen to it that I really enjoyed. And overall, just clean. You guys know me. I love a clean HUD. And that one was quite good. I think it was a good balance of showing you the data that you need to see for something action-based like that, where you do need the HP bars, but it looked clean at the same time. And still talking about graphics here, but more on the presentation side, the graphics look incredible. I mean, since Final Fantasy 15, we've had already really impressive graphics. I was in awe, right? When I played Final Fantasy 15, that was on the PS4, so it wasn't even the PC edition with the high definition textures, but I was flipping out, man. I was stopping along the way to look at sites and all that, and it's now getting to a stage where, these games are true showcases of what the current systems can do, and I'm so excited to be able to experiment that. And I really hope, bringing it back to the travel, which is one of the things that really excite me about these games, I really hope that there is a good element of just travel. Just traveling, guys. I love that. I love going from, as silly as it sounds, going from A to B. And that process, to me, is everything in these games. Being able to stop along the way, run some side quests, get a load of the terrain, enjoy the different biomes or the different areas, and get a feel for all the different places. Each place usually has its own theme music and vibe, and that to me is crucial. So I would love for them to include that. I think it would be a mistake to go all in on the combat and forgo some of those other elements like the world traversal and world building. Finally, let's talk a little bit about the main character, which we know precious little about, but I just want to lay on you my thoughts for a main character and what I personally enjoy. I've been thinking a lot about what makes a strong character, right? And it's not, for me, just being the strong silent type. That's one type of strong person, I guess. But for me, someone who is confident and strong enough to show their vulnerabilities and make themselves vulnerable sometimes is, to me, the mark of a strong character. And we see this in many movies where you have a clear differentiation of some strong characters that are disliked versus liked. And I truly believe that the ones that have some vulnerabilities and are willing to show themselves in that way, to us, they make themselves more relatable, more interesting, and more real in some way. Like they have more facets to themselves, rather than just being this stone cold, no feelings, untouchable, right? It's just not that relatable. And I get it that some people enjoy that fantasy of being the super strong type, but to me, I much prefer a character that has some nuance to them, has some emotions sometimes, and they're not afraid to make themselves vulnerable because they're confident, right? I love that confidence, that they're willing to be vulnerable with someone in particular situations, because they're just at that place where they're not worried about how people are going to view them or judge them. They're just being themselves and broadcasting themselves to the world as they are. I love that. And I'd love to see that a little bit more. I think that coming from Strangers of Paradise, which is the Final Fantasy sort of spin-off that we had. I'm really afraid that they start to go in that direction where the character is just this like stone cold, strong, silent type, just grunting, right? I think we lose a lot when we go into that territory in terms of characters, and I'd love to pull it back to maybe a bit more humorous, a bit more relatable type of characters for the main character in this game. But let me know what you thought of the footage, what you want from this game. Tell me down below in the comments, what is the single thing that excites you most about this game, or that worries you the most about what you saw and what you expect from it. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.